go ahead and get us started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are recording our session today, so we ask that everyone turn off their cameras and mute during the presentations. I'm doing the warm-up activity today, so there'll be a time where I am going to ask you all to unmute and chime in, but I'll let you know when that happens. I'll also be monitoring the chat throughout today's presentation, so feel free to put any questions in the chat, and I can help moderate a Q&A. Also, if the group is small enough, we might just do open up the mics for Q&A today. Melody Alcazar is running tech for us today, so thank you very much. And since I am recording the session, I'll share it out with a YouTube link probably on Monday. I don't foresee me doing this on my Sunday, so on Monday y'all will probably get your email. And I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. So I am currently working in Austin, Texas, and as such, I am on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Cherokee, and Sana people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. And I am going to drop a couple of links in the chat about land acknowledgements. And then I am going to move us to our first activity. So what we're going to do for our warm-up today is a sit spot. So some of you may be familiar with doing sit spots with your students. Some of you, this may be something new. And what kind of the idea behind a sit spot is it's a place that you go to on a regular basis. So it could be once a week, it could be once a day, it could be once a month, but somewhere where you're always going to the same spot. And it's a really great way to be able to track the changes throughout a school year. It's also a really great way to either start your day or end your day, because we're going to do a little bit of reflection throughout the process as well. So all you're going to need to do this activity with your students is a notebook. And my notebook is a plain, just non-lined notebook, but a lined notebook like a composition notepad works great. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. And then a pencil. Today I'm going to be using, sorry, my neighbor's dog is outdoors. Today I'm going to be using a pen just because it's going to be a little bit easier for you to see on Zoom what I'm doing, and then you're going to want to go outside. So for me, a sit spot that I do regularly is just out on my balcony. So it doesn't need to be anywhere fancy, but y'all can see I'm just on my balcony. And so this is an activity that's going to take about 10 minutes. So the first thing you're going to want to do is divide your notebook into 4 quadrants. And then in the first top left quadrant, so if you all, I'm going to want to go ahead and grab a notebook. Sorry, if you want to grab a notebook, grab a pencil, and if you're able to, go outside with your phone or computer, or you can totally do this activity indoors as well today. So I'm going to give you all just a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so as everyone is grabbing their notebook and grabbing their pencil, the first thing we're going to do in our top left quadrant is write our date. So if you're like me, you have to look at that every time because I forget. So today's date is May 8th, in case any of you are forgetting forgot what the date is, like I often do throughout the week because the days have just run together. And so you're going to put the date, and then we're going to write a little bit of information about the weather today. So here in Austin, it's cloudy, and the temperature is 73. Beautiful day. And then there's a light breeze. And then I also like to write what time it is, just so I can kind of track, you know, I'm out at 10 o'clock. So that's what we're gonna put in our first quadrant. Now you can add any more observational data as a teacher that you're wanting to add. So if you all are wanting to track rainfall or you're wanting to track any sort of thing, this is a good place to kind of track that data that you're gonna want to look at throughout the year. So our second section, I'm gonna go one to the right. So we've got this in our first quadrant. We're gonna move to this quadrant here. And for this, we're just gonna sketch what we see. So I'm gonna give y'all about 2 minutes to sketch. It doesn't need to be good sketching. As you do this in your class, your students will actually get better the more they do it. But so just tell them it's not a grade, it's not an art project, just sketch what you see. And the 2 minutes really helps with that because you just gotta get going. So I'm gonna go put myself on mute and I'm gonna give you all 2 minutes to sketch. This is your 1 minute warning. Okay, so I'm going to share with y'all kind of what my sketch looks like. And as I said, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just I did a quick sketch. I've got my sidewalk, the road across from me. There's a big tree across from me. And what I wanted to focus on today, I was kind of just looking at the grassy area that's right in front of me. And in that, I noticed that there's a few dried leaves. So I just did a pop out here. And I'm just kind of sketching one of the dried leaves. They're dried live oak leaves that are right outside. And so I just sketched one of those kind of up close. You can have them sketch whatever they want. You can do close-up sketches. You can do far away sketches. Sometimes you can change it up. You can challenge them to, when they go to their set spot, you know, today we're gonna draw something that you see that's green. We're gonna draw something that's moving, change it up. So that's the sketch portion. And now we're gonna move into the listening portion. So you're gonna take this quadrant here and you're gonna put an X right in the middle of it. And that's you. So what we're gonna do is for the next 2 minutes, y'all are just gonna listen and you're gonna draw it on the map. So like over here, I can hear a mockingbird. So I'm just gonna make a mark and write mockingbird. Now, if I hear something that's kind of out of this corner of my ear, I draw it here. If I hear something behind me, I put it there. So we're gonna do a listening map. So you have about 2 minutes. One-minute warning. Okay, would anyone like to share what they heard during their 2 minutes?
The only thing I'm hearing this morning is my new cat trying to tear my apartment apart.
Oh no.
I heard wind and leaves and car doors shut and open and drive and lots of different birds. The only one that stuck out to me was this one that was like chimp chimp, but I didn't know what type of bird it was.
And you know, labeling it bird is just great too. You know, as your students get used to doing this activity, they'll actually probably start to be able to identify some of those birds, but even just doing bird is a great observation as well. Sarah said that she had a dove and then the neighbor's rooster. So yeah, so our last quadrant here is gonna be where we've got some of our social emotional learning coming into our sit spot. So what you're going to take 2 minutes just to jot down some of your thoughts today. It can be, this is how I'm feeling, or this is, you know, these are the things that I'm thinking about today. So you're going to take 2 minutes just to write down your thoughts as you're sitting in your sit spot. And this is your 1 minute warning. Okay, so I'll just share a couple of my thoughts, and if any of y'all are willing to share as well, you're more than welcome to. Kind of started with just that it's a beautiful day, the sun's starting to come out, there's a cool breeze. Thinking about the fact that I have a busy day ahead, so there's a little bit of anxiety when it comes to just thinking about, all the things you have to do today. Also thinking that I've been seeing lots of cars go back and forth, so there's lots of people out and about, which is so different from this time last year, where it seemed like, everyone was still really locked down. We weren't going many places. I'm really thankful, reflecting on that this last year, I've had a nice place that I can sit and reflect within my kind of safe bubble. So those are some of the things I was thinking about. Sandra wrote, I'm excited to see my garden growing and anxious to see what colors of lilies and how many different types of flowers I will have after the cold weather a few weeks ago. Yeah, that's really good. Anyone else want to share? Well, thank you, everyone. I hope this is an activity that you feel like you can bring into your classroom to do with your students. As I said, it just requires a notebook and a pencil. And so hopefully it's something that'll be easily translatable. And for now, I am going to hand it over to Beth, who's going to be doing our next presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Edwards. I'm from Greenspace Learning here in Fort Worth. We are an educational consulting training firm for the early childhood industry. So we build nature playgrounds. We train out at centers in nature play and development and all kinds of topics relating to young children. And I'm going to share screen here. So today we're going to talk about nature play. Let me get this up here. There we go. Are you all able to see it okay?
Yes, we've got it.
Okay, excellent. So today we're going to talk about nature play and the benefits of nature play for development, health, and wellness. And this is geared for children 3 to 8. Early childhood is still occurring up into about 2nd grade. And many of these concepts in here, though, also are applicable to upper elementary grades and even into middle school. I think we see an even bigger decline in play in our middle school children, in our upper elementary children, and they still need play as well. It looks a little different at those ages than it does for our youngest of children. However, it is still developmentally important, and it's important for health and wellness. And our focus today will be on nature play and getting outside. So I like to start. These are some of our objectives. We'll talk about meaningful play and define that, and then talk about the benefits, and then also some strategies to support play and to advocate for play in your programs or out at your schools. So tell me some thoughts on your experiences of being outdoors as a child. Let's see, what do you remember from being outdoors? What surrounded you?
As a child, my house was surrounded by oak trees, like a whole circle. And so I used to think that there were fairies all around those, and I would just run and play with them and have a really good time with the oak trees.
That sounds magical. Yeah. That looks like somebody in chat here.
One thing that always brings up a fond memory for me as a child is when I was a kid, scratch and sniff stickers were becoming a huge thing. But we were poor. We couldn't afford like to go spend a bunch of money on scratch and sniff stickers. So what my grandmother had us do was we had citrus trees in the yard, and we would go pick leaves off the citrus trees. We were all fishers too. We would draw fish on the leaves and put a little piece of tape on them. And then if you rubbed them, they smelled like lemons or oranges. And those were our scratch and sniff stickers that our grandmother came up with for us.
Perfect. That's amazing. Yeah, to be able to use the nature to create. And that's what nature does. It often prompts creative thinking and creativity.
Sarah, Beth, we've got a couple in the chat as well. Liz put tall grass and meadow plants, plum trees. Kelly wrote climbing trees, riding bikes. I remember feeling more comfortable outside than inside.
Yeah.
And Sarah wrote, I loved making things in the mud. I remember my mom and I making cakes and cookies with mud and using leaves and flowers to decorate them.
Yes, I'll tell you, mud play comes up every single time, which always delights me because I wonder sometimes, do people do that anymore? Get out and get messy.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of children who are afraid to get messy now. And it's so integral to development, to feel and to squish and to know the properties of dirt and mud and all of our natural elements. So,
and Sandra's I lived with my grandparents at their farm while my dad was in Central America. There was an orchard where I loved to climb the trees and play elevator with some of the long branches, riding them up and down. I waded into the irrigation ditches, fed the chickens, and gathered eggs.
That sounds like the perfect childhood, being able to be outside. And of course, our crowd here, we are all nature lovers for the most part anyway. So it's magical. It's magical to be outside, and it's freeing. It's very freeing for children to be outside. Good. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. When we talk about meaningful play, this is what we're talking about. We have play-based learning or learning inspired by play, which is activities and things that are very playful. However, true play has these characteristics here. It's directed by the child. The child chooses their activity. They're using their imagination, their thoughts and ideas, and they are prompting their own play schema as they're playing. So adults are observing as children play. It's intrinsically motivating. Children know what their bodies need to work on. So if they're climbing that tree, that's what they need at that moment. They need to practice that. Their bodies are telling them that they need to move, that they need to work on these muscle groups. They're programmed intrinsically to know what they need. Children become immersed in the moment. It's all about that experience that they're having in that moment. It's very spontaneous, not scripted, although as children get older, they start to create their own scripts with play. But it's very spontaneous and very, oh, I have an idea, let me get this material, let me do this, let me try this with it. It's enjoyable to the child. So even though they're expressing a full range of emotions through play, it's something that they very much enjoy, it's something that they crave. It's imaginative, it contains elements of make-believe and is non-literal. And so a play is the way that children process ideas, process information, and make sense of the world around them. It creates a safe space, and somebody mentioned that in their memories too, that they felt safe outside, safe at play. And that's what play does. It creates that safe space for children to experiment, to try new ideas, and to explore who they are. Play is learning. So children process information and they practice life skills and they learn through play. So it's that safe space to take in information and make some sense out of the world. Nature play in particular outside provides the optimal environment for play. And there's so much to discover, as we all know, and explore, and the magic and the wonder of being outside and seeing natural elements and just learning biology and all of the different concepts that we learn when we're outside, the motion, testing ideas, our physical development, testing ourselves, social development, emotional development, all of these things are happening when we're outside. So we can see on this graphic here, all the different areas that children are working on, all of the domains are there. And these skills, they're not just for academics, right? They're for life. These are life skills, and children gain these skills through play. So play builds brains. So I think we probably all know the answer to this question in this group, but true or false, most children spend 40 minutes in unstructured outdoor play. All right.
I'm going to say false.
It is false. Yes. The average child spends 4 to 7 minutes in unstructured play outdoors. You know, that number is kind of staggering, that 4 minutes to do something is not very long at all. However, it's interesting to note that 96% of parents feel outdoor play is important. So it's kind of like, what is this disconnect here between, you know, what's actually happening and how parents feel about it? I mean, they do want their children outdoors. And I know I certainly see that in our field too. I have a lot more young parents coming and asking when they're in programs, how much time is spent in play, how much time is spent outdoors. So I have been seeing the shift happening for the last couple of years. Before it was all about what academics are you teaching my child? What, you know, how well prepared are they going to be for kindergarten? And then as millennial parents are starting to have children and get them into centers and younger, they are starting to ask more about the time spent outdoors and the time children are spent in play. So that is good news there. But I also think the pandemic is certainly going to help with that a lot too, as many families did spend more time outdoors and maybe remembered, or for the first time, maybe even experienced what it could be like to be outside. So I know in my own neighborhood, I could sit out in the backyard and I could hear children all over the neighborhood playing. And that's something that I personally hadn't heard in a long time. So it was wonderful to see and hear that going on. So some of our benefits for nature play for development, social emotional development, children are learning empathy, collaboration. We have a play school here at Play Studio in Fort Worth. It's a little part-time 3-day-a-week, just kind of a mom's morning out program. And our children are always collaborating in the backyard. Several children will want to build with stumps. They'll gather up their friends and they'll all try to move the stump together. And as the year has progressed, their projects and things that they're collaborating on have naturally evolved into bigger works while they're playing. So you can see here these two little guys. They were using hammers to break apart a piece of slate that we used in a project and worked together. They had some communication about who was going to take turns, who was going to hit the stone, where to move different stones. That little pile ended up on a big rock that we have out back as a stage. So they had a little story going on with their rocks and little camp out situation happening. So they were collaborating together, and through that there was so much social interaction happening, negotiation. There were about 4 children working on this project here. a lot of self-regulation, opportunities for that as they waited to take turns, as they took turns communicating back and forth with one another. So much opportunity for social emotional development happening when we get children outside and playing with loose parts and all of the things that we find in nature. You know, just like creating the scented stickers with leaves, you know, there's so many opportunities for children to use nature items in their play and create new things and new ways, thus thinking differently about objects and how they use them. Nature play lends itself to physical development, balance, coordination, body awareness, all of that is happening outside as they climb logs, the risky play involved helps to build strong bodies, strong core, strong fine motor, large motor, and physical confidence. As you know, some of you who are teachers may be aware that there is a bit of a problem with children falling out of their seats in the upper middle grades. You know, and some of this is an underdeveloped sensory system that's happening. Their core muscles may not be quite as strong as they should be. Their back muscles, it takes a lot of physical body strength, you know, to even be able to sit still. And this is why we have to move. This is why we have to move when we're young, is to develop those strong sensory systems. The vestibular system and the proprioceptive system in particular, those systems regulate body movement in space and teach us how we move, our awareness of body in space. So with the vestibular having to do with ear anatomy, and as children move, as they spin, it's sending information to the brain that helps the child be aware of where they are in space, whether they're upright, whether they're down, their balance, all of that. And then the proprioceptive systems as message as the body exerts pressure sent back to the brain so that the body knows how much pressure to exert. It's a push and pull kind of movement. And messages that we get as we're working outside and playing. This little guy here, he stacked up those tires and found a way to climb in. He started out with one and got in it, then got back out. He put two in, climbed up in it, got back out, put up the third one, started climbing back in, and kept challenging himself as he went along. So he was this little trial and error thing happening as he was moving to see what he could achieve and what he could accomplish. And by the time he was done, he stood up in the middle of it, raised his hands, and it was a bit of a victory moment for him. So this particular child has some ADHD concerns. And so he was able, through that practice, to spend quite a bit of time focusing in on that, which is a very healing process for our children and very helpful in ADHD and many of the sensory issues that children are having. Cognitive, there's so much opportunity outside for language and communication to occur, so many opportunities for new vocabulary, for expressing ideas and collaborating and back and forth communication with our children. So opportunities for problem solving. There's so many ways to problem solve outside as we build structures, as we dig in the ground, as we move rocks and gravel and all kinds of amazing things that are happening outside. Opportunities for independent thinking, for testing ideas, investigation, research. And as teachers, if we're talking to children about their play, you know, we can help scaffold that learning while they're working. It supports mathematical and scientific thinking. You know, as many of us observe, you know, there's so many patterns in nature, so many concepts and ideas that we can expose children to just very organically. It comes up when they're outside and they're in the woods or in their nature spaces. So, and again, so much opportunity for exploration to happen out there. So nature play, children who engage in nature play, they move in different ways to other types of play. They move their bodies in ways that promote physical wellness. So we do that, right? When we go outside, we move very differently from the ways that we move indoors. I know when I get outside, I even breathe deeper when I get out there, taking in the fresh air. It lends itself to running. Every time we open the door, the children want to take off running. There's that sense of freedom as they move outside. And then just so many opportunities for movement that we can't possibly recreate indoors. And same with sensory experiences. We can create, there's outdoors is sensory rich. It's not even anything we have to adjust. It just happens. There's so many textures, so many smells, so many ways to be in nature. And as hard as we can try indoors, we cannot replicate the same environment. So it's so critical to get outside. So our benefits of nature play for health and wellness. Nature play supports obesity prevention. Just through that movement, through all the opportunities, even to climb a tree, all of the different ways that the body moves, all the muscle groups that we're using, the fine motor as children look for things, maybe collecting bugs, that kind of thing. So many opportunities for movement. It also supports the type of movement where it's interval movement. So a child may be observing and looking for a little bit, then they may take off running for a few minutes. Then they may go back to slowing down. Then they may run again. So that movement comes in spurts, which is very good for the body, good type of exercise. So nature play supports eyesight. It supports the development of the eyes. Being in the sun helps to keep the shape of the eyes, helps that to develop. The distance, children who spend a lot of time indoors, who are not getting outdoors enough, we're starting to see some issues with long distance eyesight, and being outside helps to develop those eyes. Strengthens the immune system. This is something that we all learned. A lot of us know that being nature lovers. However, it's in mainstream now with the CDC talking about COVID and getting outside and how it supports the immune system. The disease itself breaks down easily in the wind and in outside in nature. So getting outside just for our own bodies, for our own health, increases the vitamin D levels, reduces the risk of bone and heart disease. Just being outside in nature helps to reduce symptoms for ADHD and bolsters resilience against stress, which is something, we were all tested. Our resilience was tested during this time of COVID. And so nature's the prescription, the helpfulness in building resilience and in having a little bit of peace during challenging times. So how do we support nature play? Offering free choice play as much as possible. And what I hope through my presentation today is that, there's language here that we can all start to use to advocate for recess in our ISDs, advocate for play and those breaks and getting children outside. And maybe in an ideal world that our playgrounds even have a little bit more nature. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see ISDs are asking for a little bit of nature on their playgrounds. And I'm hoping that that's something that continues over time and builds and, we start to change the way some of our playgrounds look. So encourage child choice outside, even indoors as well. Teachers, educators' roles is as observer. observe what our children are doing, know what their interests are, and then we can build our curriculums based on what we're seeing the children do. This little girl's on a stump walk here. This area of our playground was bare. Then I started noticing that our stumps were moving all over into that section of our playground. So we started adding branches then, and we started adding brick, and we even added some good sized little cobbles. And the structures that children are building in this corner of our playground, which is now our loose parts area, are amazing. And we have children from 3 all the way up to 10 working in this loose parts area and creating. And that was all based on watching how the children were using the space and putting the materials and adding to the materials that they were already using, that they were trying to build with. And so when we observe what children's interests are, then we automatically know what we can do to enhance that learning. Also through observation and the conversations we have with children, we can start to scaffold their learning in a way that's meaningful to them because they're engaged in the experience, and we can connect concepts that are on our agenda to that learning, which makes it more meaningful learning when we connect things back to ourselves. Trust the child to guide their learning. Children do unfold in development. A baby, when they start to creep and crawl, the next steps in are to walk. And once they start to have that physical development and they're ready to do it, we can't stop them from doing that. Their body knows, their development unfolds in such a natural way. And it's our job as educators to create that environment that's optimal for them to learn, both indoors and then to get them outside in that optimal environment of nature-rich space. Continue to learn about health and wellness and nature, and then educate others about it, educate parents in particular, and on the importance of getting their children outside. Many parents are not aware of all the benefits to being outside in nature, to being out in play. And we're missing such a component of development when we're not aware. So being an advocate for nature-rich spaces, being an advocate for play, making it mainstream to spend our days outside. Let's see here. So if you are not coming from a space that's rich with nature, if you're in an ISD or even home, I know our nature centers are the models for rich spaces. But start with a few nature items outdoors. Stumps, loose parts, or garden boxes are great ways to start. And then as you learn how the children use these items, you can start to build on that. So it doesn't have to be an overwhelming process to add a few more items outside. Tree cookies are a wonderful addition to an outdoor playground. And that's where when we've taken a log and we've sliced it, kind of like a roll of cookies, and the children will use that to jump on, they will use to build with them. They will become all kinds of things. So tree cookies are a wonderful thing to have outside. Bricks are a wonderful thing. The children will use all of these items together to build structures, to build patterns, and all kinds of amazing things. Introduce materials to children when we first put these things out, talk to them about how they're used, ask their ideas on how they're used, and how to take care of these things, how to put them back, and just that general introduction, and then let them explore those materials to see how they're used. And as time goes on, their play will become quite intricate with loose parts. Observe how the children use those materials and then add more. So here's an interesting quote on free play. Recent research suggests that children should spend twice as much unstructured time as structured play experiences. That's a tall order. 1/3 of our day being in structured time versus 2/3 of our day being in unstructured time. You know, our systems, especially our educational system, is very heavy on structured activity, teacher learning, teacher-directed learning. So this is a very interesting idea, and my challenge is to see where can we add more unstructured play time for children to make those choices for themselves. Are there ways that we can get children outside during the school day just a little bit more to help with that, to help with processing information, to give their brains a break, to give their bodies a break, to help reduce stress in the day. All of those things happen when we get children outside. And so look for ways to get them outside, even if it's just taking them outside to do activities. The more we can get them outside, the better it is for them. And then here's some resources and references. And this book, Balanced and Barefoot, How Unstructured Play Makes for Strong, Confident, Capable Children, is an amazing book and covers all of these topics here that I've covered today and more. It's written from an occupational therapist's point of view. The information is just invaluable in understanding how play and nature play benefits children. And why we need to do it, why we need to get them out more. Of course, Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv is amazing reading as well. Definitely started the movement of nature play that we're all building on. And then Loose Parts Nature Play podcast by Dr. Carla Gull, if you're a podcast person. Wonderful ideas for loose parts play and nature play. So I thank you for your time today. And I can open the floor for questions.
Yeah, Beth, I think we've got a small enough group that what we can do is just, if you have a question, feel free to take yourself off mute. If you don't want to do that and you want to put it in the chat, I'm more than happy to read it out as well.
Have you noticed a difference between spaces that are enclosed with fences versus no barriers and the way that children act in there?
That is a good question. With small children, no, because they don't wander too far. With older children, though, their range, they like to go from a small area to a larger area to a larger area as they explore. So yes, and for older children, that would give them more range to move and explore as they explore their independence. And we've had some toddler playgrounds that were pretty tiny, and the ability to run has been hindered so they're not running as far as they could in a more open space as well. So, and it depends also on how many children we have in a space too, with how much range of freedom they have. So yes, I would say there are some differences. Good question.
One question we've kind of been discussing is the idea of parent perception of a nature play space versus the traditional playground. And what have you observed from the parents that are participating with your program?
With parents and educators alike, when we put in a nature space, we provide professional development to go with it. And we also offer that to the center community as well, so that we can talk about the challenges that are really just perceptions. And the biggest one is risky play. You know, parents are often afraid that their children are going to get hurt if they climb on a boulder. And really the risk, as we know, if you've been in nature play for a while, it's less risky, or there's fewer accidents in natural playgrounds than there is in the typical pour and play playground. And this is because nature is a little bit unpredictable. So children are cautious no matter how they're using the equipment, whereas pour and play is very predictable. So as the child learns what that can do, they start to look for ways to challenge themselves. So they may climb to a height and think it's okay to jump, or they may swing from something that is really not designed to be swung from. So we find that with the pour and play type of structures, there's actually more accidents and injuries. But to the adult mind, we see scrapes, we see little bruises, bumps and things, and that's alarming then. And so educating parents on the development of being outside, of all the opportunity that's out there when children learn to garden, is helpful, and you can have some aha moments where parents start to see, okay, that's making sense. So some other challenges with parents have been getting dirty. And again, that's something that we just need to educate on, that our children have to get dirty. They have to for their immune systems alone. It's important that children interact with microbes and things that are in soil, and that builds our immune system. So again, it's that education piece of educating our parents that this is why we do this. It's not that, it's not that we're just filling time here. We're filling critical development. We're allowing opportunity. Does that answer that question?
It does, thanks. And it makes me wonder, do you all have like adult day to play? Because I feel like as an adult, I don't get as much time to play as I would like.
Yes. And you bring up an excellent point there too. One thing we own Play Studio here in Fort Worth, which is an indoor-outdoor play space, and families come in to play. And a lot of the comments that I hear, and we are just nothing but loose parts in nature out back. And parents will come in and they'll be hesitant, and then pretty soon they start playing with their children. And then pretty soon I find paintings and drawings and all these things that were done by the adults when they came to visit. And they leave and they're like, it is so peaceful here. And they're back, just because of that opportunity to play with their children. And giving parents permission to play, that all adults, we all need to play. This is how we're creative. It's if we get too much in our heads, those ideas don't flow. The health, all of it. So another thing that's happening with Play Studio is we work with MHMR of Tarrant County to provide respite play. So we get families that are in situations with DPS, and they come in and, we encourage them to play as a family. And I've had long-term families that have come, over a period of months, and the difference from the beginning to the end in just having that 2 hours a week of play together. They're laughing together, they're building connection as a family. And it's just all very, very positive and very healing. So yes, getting parents out to play and being part of that play with their children is so enjoyable and builds strong relationships. Go ahead.
And then we've got a question in the chat from Sandra. She says, how are schools reacting to nature play ideas? That's a slow process. We are getting more requests for play-based training and nature learning. However, the challenges seem to be coming from like making all of their peak standards and all of that, how to rectify nature play with meeting those standards. So moving the needle to have those conversations about how nature play fulfills those requirements. And it really does.
it just looks different. It's not the old model of learning. It's a more observational type of learning, and a lot of scaffolding, a lot of conversation. So it's having those conversations and getting that nature play into the curriculum, and showing what the benefits are and what that looks like, and the balance between children exploring and teacher-led instruction, you know, and both are needed. But it's finding that balance between those two entities for the whole child. And then we did a nature playground for Crowley ISD, and it has been very well received. It is for their Head Start, so we're starting with the early childhood programs. And our hope as a company is that, you know, schools start to see how it is for their early childhood, and then they want to add it on to their other playgrounds as well. So again, it's a slow process, but we are seeing more and more requests for nature play in our ISDs. And a lot of it is being driven by teachers.
Great. We probably have time for one more question. If anyone has one. Well, thank you, Beth. I really appreciate your time this morning. This has been a fantastic presentation. I know that there were a few people who joined specifically. They wanted to hear your presentation about this morning. So I thank you so much for presenting. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to put up our two back, everyone. We are just about done with our workshop today, but before we close out, I just wondering if there was anyone who wanted to share something that stood out to them during their breakout session. Okay, well, oh, Mallory, I saw you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about, so Brian was has created this beautiful idea of immersing students within their community. So kind of like place-based learning, but really getting people to know their environment intimately and learning the intricacies of it and the problems that arise and how intertangled we are within our environment. And by creating projects, we're helping out our community. And I found that very beautiful.
Well, wonderful. Brian is a fantastic presenter, so I'm sure that you had a wonderful time.
Okay. I apologize for my English, though. It wasn't my first language, so I do apologize, but thank you.
I thank you all for attending this morning. I will be emailing out the recording on Monday. And I thank you all. We're working on scheduling one last workshop for June, and it is going to be a mental health break for all of our educators. It's going to be forest bathing, so an opportunity to really reflect on this past year and a half, because I know it has been quite the year and a half for all of us in the education field. We're just finalizing that date. Hopefully I'll have that for Monday, and I will put that in the email that we send out. It's looking like it'll be either June 6th or 7th, just finalizing the date. But thank you so much, everyone, for attending this morning, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Saturday.